Welcome back to Report. My name is Lucy Lawler.
And I'm Emma Wozniak. As seen on Instagram, TikTok, and various other social media platforms, the Report format advises viewers on what to read, eat, play, obsess over, recommend, and treat themselves to.
Each episode will focus on one letter of our report, and this time we will discuss some activities we are currently obsessing over.
All this and more on this installment of Report. All right, Lucy, well, why don't you get started and tell us what you've been obsessing over recently?
What a funny thing to ask. Of course I will. So today I'm going to be talking about journaling just as a hobby. It is probably one of my favorite hobbies, and it was honestly something that I struggled to get into at first because I was struggling with this pressure of feeling like it had to be perfect and that everything had to look just a certain way, and that if it wasn't aesthetic, it wasn't worth doing, and that is just not the case.
True.
Not the case at all.
Unhealthy mindset for sure.
Yes, so I will be talking about two sort of styles of journaling today. The first one is a media style of journaling.
Okay.
So here's mine.
Ugh.
It was recently completed, so I just keep track of the books I read,
so
the movies
beautiful.
and the TV shows I watch. So this is a book, for example, it's Ariadne by Jennifer Saint, which is a great book, just as an aside. But you can see that the sort of format that I use is book or movie cover, and then in the case of books, I'll usually use paintings or if there's some good fan art lying around.
Ooh.
And then for movies and TV, I will usually use stills or just promotional images.
It's so
and
beautiful.
then, oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And then just my unsolicited commentary right down the page. But I think this might be my favorite style of journaling to do. It's definitely, I don't want to say it's less personal, but it's less memory driven, but it's just so fun to chronicle your thoughts on the media that you consume. I know that might sound not fun at all, but I promise that it's an enjoyable thing.
Yeah, I feel it's a good I don't know if mindless is the right word, but it's a good kind of cathartic, you had a long day and you just want to put your creative juices into something that maybe doesn't require as much hard concentrated brain power.
Exactly.
And you get such a beautiful product at the end.
And I just have this vision of maybe my descendants stumbling upon this book, and they will get to see how I felt about everything that I consumed in the year of 2022.
Very good point.
Every single piece of media. But this one actually I wanted to shout out just because I know that it's having a little resurgence in pop culture right now. It's Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. I saw it on August 27th, 2022 in theaters. So it's fun to look back on this now that everybody is on the Bodies, Bodies, Bodies train.
Right.
Because at the time, I don't think it had the greatest critical reception, and it wasn't the biggest box office smash either, but it is just a fun sort of, I don't know, ridiculous comedy. And so revisiting my initial thoughts on that has been really fun. But yeah, that's just sort of the vibe. I remember, one more that I'll show before moving on is After Sun. It was the last entry in this journal. It is such a good movie. It's A24, Paul Mescal's in it. It's just the story of a father and a daughter and their sort of heartbreaking emotional vacation. But it's so good, and I'm so happy that I have my initial opinions on it in here. And then I guess I'll just move on to the second style. This will probably be a little bit quicker, but it's memory driven. It's all about pictures and just paper scraps and saving things. But yeah, here's an example. This is the Taylor Swift concert in the summer with my sisters.
That's so pretty.
Yeah, I'll try to find the lantern page. Oh, here's the lantern staff page that I made.
Yes,
everybody is represented.
Applause,
but yeah,
representation.
just using scrap pieces of paper, movie tickets, vintage postcards, anything just to have fun with it, and the pictures as well, which I just print here on campus.
I love that. So how did you, as someone who is also very much type A, I personally took up bullet journaling a little while ago, quite a while ago actually, and stopped because I was actually incapable of moving on if I had made a mistake in some capacity. And so I really struggled to do it because every time I would make a mistake, I would just either rip out the page and start anew or just give up entirely. So how did you kind of overcome that sort of mental block that you were talking about?
I wanted to do that so many times, but every single time I would just make another page. And honestly, the more pages that you add, the more it all comes together.
True.
Even if it's not perfect, it's just yours and it's amazing. And yeah, I use a lot of anything that I can get my hands on, what's this? This week's lantern.
What? How convenient.
Obviously read it first, but after I will probably be using some of the text/images from this in my work. So that's really fun. And then yeah, just finding paper everywhere you go. I thrifted this from a secondhand shop. anything is fine. But yeah, just get started and keep going even when you don't want to. And I promise you that eventually it will become easy to not judge yourself so harshly.
I will try to take that advice.
Of course.
Thank you.
But yeah, let's move on. What are you obsessing over,
Yes, well, I'm obsessing over something that I don't think is a hot take, but is an obsession of mine nonetheless, and that would be the New York Times mini games. Now, I've seen all over social media that I don't think I'm alone in this experience. It seems that a lot of people, at least on my side of the internet, are also very much dedicating a lot of time to these kinds of games. And so I want to talk about some that I particularly enjoy, and then some that I maybe don't enjoy at all. And that second category really takes, the one that takes the cake there is going to be the New York Times crossword. And I have a really, really significant bone to pick with them because I've done other crosswords from other like magazines or news organizations online before, and I have never felt as dumb as I feel when I'm taking the New York Times crossword. And I know that I have joined Lucy in on this experience because I try doing these in the newsroom quite often. And it's so challenging.
Some of the clues are just absolutely
absurd.
Nonsensical
I
to
know.
me. Yeah,
and like I've also noticed something that like with some of the clues, there's like little like patterns that the New York Times has used in previous crosswords where like it'll say like something in italics that's supposed to be some hint, but if you've not done the previous crosswords before, you would have no way of knowing that that was a hint in any capacity. And so it's just not very user friendly. I feel like it's not good for people who are just looking to do like a regular crossword. It feels very like nuanced and layered. So that one gets 2 thumbs down for me.
Sorry, crossword.
Sorry, New York Times crossword. But I think something that is actually not very popular, but I really enjoy is called Letterboxd. And this is a game where it gives you like a square of letters and you have to try to make words out of them. And it gives you usually like a cap, like you have to make, solve this puzzle, use all the letters in this many words or less. So this one happens to be 5 words or less. But the trick is that you can't use any letters next to each other that are like on the same plane. So like in this instance, you couldn't do like FI because like the I is right next to it. You would have to do something across from it. It's too easy, so they challenge you a little bit. And this one's super fun. I think this one lends itself to a little bit more creativity because there's not just one right answer. So I would highly recommend if you haven't tried that one.
I'm excited to try that one.
I'm so glad. And then of course we can't forget about Wordle. Wordle, has been a staple New York Times game. In fact, it was probably the first one that ever really got popular. I was thinking when I was telling Lucy about it, we would send like our Wordle games we would text them to other people to show how many attempts it took us to get the word. Why did we do that?
So vain.
So yeah, did anyone care? Like, why were we doing that? It was so bizarre to me that it was such a huge cultural phenomenon. And I think it still is a little, but it definitely has been superseded by the one and only New York Times Connections.
So good.
Which is truly the highlight of my days. I love doing this. I cannot get through a day without doing a New York Times Connections puzzle. Even if/when I ultimately don't solve it, and then it actually has a negative effect on the rest of my day, I have to admit. I won't, show today's puzzle because we did attempt it earlier and
we can't really speak on
it didn't go so well. Yeah, so we don't want to spoil it for anyone. But even when I do, fail sometimes and I don't solve the puzzle, I do still just love having something fun to do when I'm bored and just have a few minutes to spare. So that's why I think the New York Times mini games are a blast. If you have a few extra minutes on your hands and need a way to pass the time.
I will say, Emma is usually very adept at connections.
Oh.
She usually solves it with no mistakes.
Thank you.
I can attest to her abilities.
That's so kind.
But you know what? That's all it for us today, and thank you for tuning in to this installment of Report.
Yes, we will see you all next time as we recommend the latest top products. Bye, everyone.